Welcome back to News Talk and our look at the New Hampshire primary and the political contests that are next on the political calendar. With us in Manchester, New Hampshire, our chief political correspondent, Scott Newman. With us here in the studio, Steve Shepard, campaigns and elections editor for Politico. Gentlemen, let's shift gears and talk about the Democrats. Everyone expected New Hampshire to be a real problem for Hillary Clinton, but her loss to Bernie Sanders was even bigger than expected. They both talked to supporters after the results came in.
What happened here in New Hampshire in terms of an enthusiastic and aroused electorate, people who came out in large numbers, that is what will happen all over this country.
Here's what we're going to do. Now we take this campaign to the entire country. We're going to fight for every vote in every state. We're going to fight for real solutions that make a real difference in people's lives.
Steve Shepard, was this the sort of loss for Hillary Clinton that can't easily be brushed off? She's heading to more favorable terrain, states with much more diverse demographics. Some wins for her could easily be right around the corner, but a loss of this margin, right? It'll sting. Will it? What can we expect in terms of the internal thought processes within Clinton world?
I mean, it's going to be a long 10 days between now and the Nevada caucuses on February 20th. Hillary Clinton lost by 22 points last night. That is probably the largest margin we've seen really in the modern era of the New Hampshire primary, when there wasn't an incumbent president on the ballot on the Democratic side. So you're talking about a really historic victory for Bernie Sanders. Yes, the next two states, Nevada, South Carolina, set up better. Nevada's caucuses, they're all about mobilization. They're all about mobilization in the Las Vegas area. A lot of Hispanics, also a lot of African Americans in the Democratic electorate there. Then you move to South Carolina on the 27th. A majority of Democratic primary voters, narrow majority, are African American there. That is not a group that Bernie Sanders has done well with so far in this campaign. There haven't really been a lot of African Americans or minorities in Iowa and New Hampshire in the electorate. That's going to change in the next two states. But Bernie Sanders has some momentum coming off this 22-point victory. It's why he's in Harlem this morning, meeting with Al Sharpton at Sylvia's. He is trying to make inroads. They're going to talk about what's going on in Flint, Michigan. They're both trying to appeal to African-American voters because they're looking at Nevada and South Carolina, and they realize the electorate will be different there.
Scott, we're hearing that Hillary Clinton could alter her messaging and that leadership changes within the campaign could be coming. Can you talk about that and Bernie Sanders' opportunity now to build on what was, by any definition, a huge win in New Hampshire?
Yeah, well, first of all, with Hillary Clinton, look, her team is denying that there's some major shakeup in the works, despite multiple reports that there are insiders who say that there are going to be some changes with the leadership in her team. You know, her comments last night, she continued to kind of push upon this premise that I know what it's like to get knocked down and it's important that you get back up, and we've done this before. But how infuriating it must be for Hillary Clinton, who's had at least some sort of infrastructure here in New Hampshire since really kind of 2006, 2007 when she first made a run, to see this kind of loss. And Bernie Sanders, without necessarily trying to, maybe it was a subtle hint, or not so subtle hint, I guess, kind of pointing out the kind of, I guess, shock and awe of it all. I mean, look, this is a guy who 9 months ago had really no name recognition outside of the Capitol Hill circles and New England, a guy who had no ground game put together, no support, very little idea of how you would fundraise for an actual presidential campaign, and suddenly he's got a virtual tie-in, he's got a win in New Hampshire, and you've pointed out, difficult for him moving forward, but man, I mean, how frustrating does that have to be for any opponent, whether it's Hillary Clinton or anyone else who's been established for a long time in the presidential circles, to see a defeat, especially of this margin? It wasn't just a small loss for her. It's a big loss. And she came out there and she had to put kind of a smile on what has to be a disappointing night moving forward. Now, we're, and you pointed out, Bruce, that we're in New Hampshire. We're actually now in Boston.
Oh, sorry.
We've been driving. We're heading to Milwaukee tonight. In just a few hours, we're flying to Milwaukee because you've got the next Democratic presidential debate. That's taking place Thursday night in Milwaukee. It's going to be very interesting to see how these two interact, because they've been relatively civil up until about 2 weeks ago. And now when Hillary Clinton feels this panic start to set in, What is she going to do to try and discredit him as a viable opponent?
Steve, the next debate between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders would seem teed up as a real moment for her to unveil some new messaging, perhaps stress some new themes, and embrace the new electorates that are in these upcoming contests. Get New Hampshire as deep into the rearview mirror view as she possibly can, because she needs some wins to avoid the chattering class going berserk, basically.
Yeah, you heard some of that last night in their respective speeches. Both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders really aiming at minority voters in a way that they haven't in Iowa and New Hampshire. I think one of the other things that Hillary Clinton needs to do is she needs to raise money. Right now, this is an untold story, really, the campaign. Bernie Sanders is raising more money than Hillary Clinton, and he's spending more money than Hillary Clinton. You think of him as this, first of all, he's a campaign finance reformer, but also as the campaign that isn't, the establishment doesn't have the moneyed interest, and that's true, but he has all of this army of small donors that haven't maxed out to him yet, that can still keep giving more money. Hillary Clinton's donors, a lot more of them, have already hit their limits for this cycle, can't give more money legally. She needs to expand that, and I think she needs a strong debate performance tomorrow night, and I think also a shakeup on our campaign team is one way to signal to prospective donors, I get it, I realize there's a problem right now, and I'm working to fix it, and I need your help.
Scott, we only have 30 seconds left. The Clinton camp has to be nervous that folks who thought, I'm not going to vote for Bernie Sanders, I like him, but he can't win, so I'm not even going to consider voting for him. Now that he's winning, that paradigm could change.
And it happens every cycle. There's always a candidate that is dismissed as someone who's not electable, who doesn't need to be taken seriously. They emerge, and everyone has to change the dynamics and the chemistry of a campaign going forward. Look for Hillary Clinton to employ some new strategies. It doesn't necessarily mean a shakeup on the team, although it could include that. But look for her to come out with some sort of new attacks while still trying to look presidential and get herself back atop this race, because it's not an easy feat for anyone.
Scott Thuman in Boston, Steve Shepard of Politico here on set. Thank you both. Great conversation. We appreciate both of you joining us today. We step aside. We're back with the program note after this.